Beautiful. As everybody's coming in, I want to welcome you to your mentoring call with Shamini Jain, right? We just had this talk.
You said it perfectly, Heather.
Oh my gosh, having a morning already. But we want to take your answers, your questions. If you have any, things through the course that you had more clarification you needed around, this is your time to ask. So we'll just ask you to raise your hand if you want to get on screen and ask her a question, or you can put questions in the chat. Um, but don't hesitate, don't be shy. Join us on camera. Ask us your questions. We'd love for you to join us. Again, I'm Heather Gray, and we're on the mentoring call for becoming a conscious creator. Welcome.
Welcome, everyone. So good to see everybody. I love that I can see all your faces. A couple of you don't have your cameras enabled, but if you do, I would love to see you if possible. This is a really special time for us to be together. So maybe before we begin, let's just take one moment of collective breathing and come into resonance together before we begin questions. Everything is open and we'll see where we go. I'm excited to hear how you guys have been enjoying the course and what things have been coming up. So it's a new year. It's 2024. It's unbelievable. We're emerging on the year of the wood dragon. Quite an auspicious year, powerful year. Let's take a moment and just take a moment to come into our breathing together. You can close your eyes if you wish, as is your practice. Wow, feeling the power and the energy of this group is quite amazing. As we come into our power, both personal and collective, sometimes it's nice to have a point of focus, a simple point of focus. For many in the meditation practice, simply allowing your focus to rest at the tip of the nose can be very nourishing. Noticing the breath as it flows in and out of the body in the field. And directing the focus to the tip of the nose. Feeling this beautiful coherence. May this coherence of hearts and minds and souls guide our time together in the next hour. When you're ready, if you've had your eyes closed, you can open them. Wow, what a beautifully powerful group you are. Thank you. That is just such a wonderful energy that I can feel from all of us here together. So thank you for that. Very nourishing.
So we've got a question starting out on the chat and from Guru Nam, and she says she's been doing the watch parties with Bruce so far, but she would curious about a little preview of some of the stuff that you cover in the masterclass.
So does that mean that she hasn't seen any of the material that I've done in the masterclass? I'm a little confused.
Yeah, it says she's only been watching Bruce so far.
Oh, okay. Well, you'll have to watch it to find out, really. It's
Stay
really
tuned. Yeah.
it's all there for you, so feel free to dig in. You'll see that Brucey and I try to complement each other often. So just I know that I'm new to many of you, so my background is as a clinical psychologist and a researcher in psychoneuroimmunology. So when Bruce and I teach together, I'm often holding the psyche aspects of psychoneuroimmunology, but I do also talk a bit about research, particularly the areas of biofield science, the study of energy and information, things like energy healing and their effects downstream on our immune function. So some of the lectures you'll find are science-based lectures like that, where we're really kind of diving into the science behind energy and how it works. But we also get into practice, and I'm a big lover of sound as a really nourishing practice. So there are meditations as well as sound making practices to help connect you to your biofield and work with your energy. We also talk a bit about well-being from the psychoneuroimmunology perspective, the different facets of well-being, which for review, I know those of you who have seen the modules know, we talked about hedonic well-being, which is kind of our emotional state, and eudaimonic well-being, which are the facets of things like purpose and mastery and connection, and what we often call transcendent or non-dual well-being, which is our connection with the divine. And so we get into a bit of the research behind all of those facets and then talk about how we can cultivate those facets for total well-being. So I've just given you a summary of all of the things that I've kind of covered in this course. Hopefully most of you who have actually seen it, and those of you who haven't, who are kind of Brucey fans and just kind of getting to know me, I hope that you enjoy those aspects of the course as well.
I love that you call him Brucey. And I meant to ask you when you two were together, like, where did that come from?
I don't know. I think I just heard either heard himself call himself that or somebody else. Maybe it was Greg who calls him Brucey. I forget, but just sort of stuck. It's a kind of in term of endearment. Uncle Bruce. A lot of folks call him Uncle Bruce as well. Obviously have the highest regard for Bruce. Incredible mentor, incredible person, and as you know, just a real embodiment of joy and light. He really loves what he does. He loves science and he loves teaching. And it's just been an honor to co-teach with him.
Absolutely. So Guru Man has your hand raised. Would love for you to come on and ask your question.
Well, I'm the one who put that former question in, and I just wanted to clarify that we're watching the course in the watch parties. And so far, there's at the beginning a little bit of you and Bruce, chat for a moment. And then so far, all the modules we've seen have been turned over to Bruce to do the rest of the module. So it was even commented on that it's interesting that we're having your mentoring session before we've really gotten to your modules.
I'm a little confused on that actually, because the way we designed the course was very much him doing one, then me doing one, then him doing one, and me doing one. So I'm not sure how it's been set up on the streaming or whatever platform, but just know that the way we designed it, and I'll tell you the fun story about how we did this. As you know, a lot of teachers are very, very busy. Bruce and I actually took time out of our schedules to record everything together. So just so you, I hope will appreciate kind of the thoughtfulness that we put behind this course. Of course, we got together and discussed all of our modules thoroughly and talked about how we would connect our modules. So the way that we designed it, I actually went to him in Santa Cruz and we recorded everything together in about a week's time. And we were there for each other's lectures. So I would listen to him, he would listen to me. And so I'm not sure what order you guys are getting presented, but you will notice sort of the linkages, even if for some reason it's set up to where Bruce's modules are first and then mine, you'll see where those threads of continuity are because we really did design the course that way.
Yeah, so I'm aware that the whole thing's on the platform. Some people are commenting that they've seen your modules on the platform, but I'm pacing it with the watch parties because that makes me put it on the calendar and do it.
Oh, that's a great idea. That's really wonderful.
Yeah, and then it's really delightful to be able to talk about them after we've viewed them together. And there's like a whole bunch of us that are on there fairly regularly, so it's it's just a really good way to do it. But so far, I think maybe the one or two at the beginning, there might have been more of you, but I think we're about at the midpoint of the course, and they have been primarily Bruce lectures for the last few times. So it's good to know that what your focus is the science behind the energy healing and that there will be sound meditations and things like that as part of your program.
Yeah, thank you. I hope you enjoy it. It's going to be a really great compliment to everything you've seen of Bruce's so far.
Yeah. And how did you and Bruce first meet or, see this connection to work together?
It's, everything is an emergence, and this is relevant, I think, to the course. I talk a lot about the power of creativity and kind of allowing for creative emergence. This, the subtitle of this course really is about being a conscious creator. And so for me personally, that has just meant being open to what wants to be created and how. And it's really being open to divine, open to service. And I do have a habit of saying yes to things. So that there's always that. And I think Bruce and I first met, I run a nonprofit called the Consciousness and Healing Initiative. It's a nonprofit that forwards the science and practice of healing. As I mentioned, I've come into this as a scientist and a psychologist. So I founded the Consciousness and Healing Initiative about 10 years ago to build community of people initially who were doing research in energy healing and quickly began to realize that this was positively affecting a lot of healers. So we started enlarging the community, and it's really a beautiful community of healers, scientists, artists, teachers who lead humanity to heal ourselves. Well, long story short, one of our board members said, we were doing an in-person conference. I think this one was in 2019, I think, or 2017, before COVID. They said, we'd love to get Bruce Lipton. I said, that's great. I don't know him, actually, but if you do, see if he wants to do it. We're a small nonprofit. We don't have a lot of funds, but I don't know. He's a kind of big guy. I don't know if he'll do it, but, ask him. Well, he did. And I think he grew to appreciate, well, he didn't grow. He learned about Chi, the Consciousness and Healing Initiative, and appreciated what we were doing. And then honestly, the co-teaching just sort of emerged. I was on my way to teach at Esalen, and I knew that he lived in the area, and I asked, how do you and your wife want to have dinner? So we just started chatting. That was kind of during COVID. And he said, would you like to teach with me? I said, I would be honored to do that. I think that'd be wonderful. So just really clicked. And if you've not met Bruce's wife, Margaret, she's an incredibly wonderful soul. So I feel very privileged to be in his orbit. So thanks for asking. And it's just a reminder that you don't know what's ahead. I had no plan to do that. I had no, there was no design, there was no strategy. A lot of times people will ask me, well, how did you get to do this and that and the other? And it's like, well, I didn't plan any of it, actually. I just was asked.
You magnetized it.
This is where the eudaimonic well-being aspect really comes into play, because I think that when we are really connected with our soul's light, the soul leads. And spirit is with us, and spirit orchestrates. I've often had healer friends say, hold your desire, the deepest desire in your heart, whatever it is, to serve, to show, to learn, to love. Hold that desire and let spirit orchestrate the details. Now, isn't that wonderful? But it's really true, because, and why? Let's think about this from like the psychological point of view, because if you try to get mired in those details, you have contracted your field. You've contracted the field of possibility, because you only are working with the conditioned mind and what the conditioned mind knows. Now, sometimes there is planning and orchestration that needs to happen, no doubt. And I could give you plenty of examples, but I don't want this mentoring call to be about everything that I do. It's about what you want to do. But when that call comes in, and then let the mind work on the day-to-day details that need to carry out a conference or put together an album or whatever it is you're doing. But the initial call, you will feel it's not coming from you. It's coming from somewhere else. And you just, if it resonates, you say yes to it.
Yes. I totally agree. I mean, I'm not going to take up any more of this call's time, but I have so many examples of that myself, and it's such a treasure. You could feel the universe having your back to put you together with just the right resources to make a thing happen. So thank you, and I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to your modules too on the course.
Thank you.
Thank you, Guruman. We've got Jean, who says she can't raise her hand, but she wants to come on and ask a question.
Shamini, I'm referring to the question that you and Bruce answered back in December regarding distant healing. And both of you answered most of my question, but there's still something that's bothering me. I've had a mental block about this for several years. But I sent a long email just now, hoping I wouldn't have to read this to you. But I'm trying to find the bottom line for my question. And I think it's because you answered how I broadcast on my ID through the field, but the recipient has to be able to pick up my broadcast. So this is, so do I say to them, because I did a sound healing session 2 years ago for anybody and everybody who's suffering, especially animals. I need to be able to explain this to people who don't know anything about the field or alternative healing in a way that they can understand. It's very simple and very brief. So I'm going to make it, it condenses. If I briefly tell them about the biofield and refer to the entanglement as a possible explanation, because I know we don't have all the information, and tell them that when I mentally broadcast my intent for their healing or their highest good, I ask them to set their own intention for the antennae on their cells to be able to receive my broadcast identification, so that whatever part of their body needs a healing will automatically be connected to me, and through me, the divine, whose energy I'm channeling, so that they can receive the therapeutic touch energy or the sound transmission or the love transmission being broadcast by me. That's one question. Now, is that a correct statement? Have I got it right?
I think you have it right, Jean. I do. I think the struggle that you're having is that our culture wants us to be able to describe very precisely the mechanisms behind things like distant healing. And
Right.
one, you can fairly say that we're not there in being able to describe the mechanisms. And two, I would question whether it makes sense to even try to describe the full mechanism of distant healing, because I think that there are certain things that may remain a mystery in the spiritual realm that are very, very hard to describe using our current scientific methodology. Now, all of that being said, the other thing, because I hear you very loud and clear, and we get this a lot from different healers saying, how do I explain what I do? Okay, to other people who just are learning about the field. And sometimes we say things to folks like that very simply, like, many cultures have understood that we have different subtleties in what we call our body. We have a physical body, we have an energetic body, we have an emotional body, we have a spiritual body, right? And these have been described, of course, in different cultures. I draw from Vedanta, obviously, because of my tradition, but Vedanta is not the only tradition. The Indian tradition is not the only tradition that describes the subtlety of these bodies in great detail, where from spiritual practice. So these were spiritual adepts who saw, felt, experienced, and I'm very clear in describing this. And if you've seen my book, Healing Ourselves,
I have.
You know all that mapping. So when you're describing this to someone, you can say, look, have you ever noticed, how you walk into a room and you can feel right away whether there's good energy or bad energy? You might feel energized, you might feel drained. That's part of the field at work, because while we think about just our physical bodies, we also have an energetic body. That energetic body is part of an entire field.
Right.
And while we don't think about it, my being does not end here at my skin. With training and focus, I can extend my perceptions of someone else, because we're not truly separate, through the field, so that we can connect. And different traditions, different skill sets have ways of doing this. To me, I think of distant healing as a tuning into. So it's not so much broadcasting as it is, I'm connecting with this person who I may know, who I have a picture of. I have some information on them so that I can tune into them. I can expand my sense of the field to tune into this person and feel into them.
Mm-hmm.
So that I can then nourish them in the right way with my sound, with energy, whatever. So it is a lessening of the sense of separation between two people across space and sometimes time that allows for that field to be greater nourished and nourish the other person. I don't know that it's any better of an explanation than what you've given, Jean. It's really difficult, but I think the keys here for people who aren't familiar with this are for them to first grasp the idea that we're more than our physical bodies and that
Yeah.
our minds are more than just our brain activity. So
Yes.
if we can get them to that place, sometimes honestly, for people who are very skeptical, it's best to say, we don't know how it works, but there's data suggesting that it does. Entanglement may be an explanation. We don't
Yeah.
know. But what I can tell you is, and then you talk about the experiences that people have had with your work.
Thank you. Yes, but that addresses the people I know. What about the people I don't know? Because in this session I sent out to friends to give to their friends, etc. I included everybody unknown to me. That my love and healing intent was going to them also, and the animals suffering everywhere. Did you answer that in the previous?
Yeah, no, I think it's a collective field. So different people will describe this differently. My healing teacher will often say the biggest aura wins. Okay. So what that means, whether you're in the room or you're connected like this virtually or whatever, when you have an intention of bringing fields together, you're creating ideally a collective coherence. In my view, it's not really just one person. It's not even the biggest aura. Now, the biggest aura may be the primary resonator, right? Like the heartbeat. If you think about our relationship with the earth, it's a great example. We are all familiar with the Schumann resonance. We're familiar perhaps with some of the wonderful data coming out of HeartMath showing how our heart rate variability actually synchronizes with other humans. And it seems like the driver of this is actually the earth's rhythm.
Oh,
Okay, so
yeah,
in this case,
yes.
the earth is the primary resonator, and we are beings on top of the earth. We are
Yes.
connected with each other by the very fact that we are creatures on the earth, and she is resonating through us at every moment, connecting us with each other. So in group healing practices, it's the same. We all have our perceptions of the field. When we get together to do distant healing work, some of us see things a little differently. Some of us see the same things, even though we're not talking about it. And then we talk about it later and say, oh, I saw that too. But we're creating a coherent collective field, partially because we're uniting our minds and our vital forces together for a common purpose.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And by the way, I love the interaction between you and Bruce also,
Thank you.
but I was scared to say it, but it's wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much, Jean. So I had a private message come in from Debbie, and then we'll go to Dasha and Francis next. Debbie asked, considering healing by laying on of the hands and distant healing, what area of research for nurses do you feel are most critical in mental health?
Oh, what a wonderful question. For nurses in mental health, all healing is wonderful, first of all, for patients. We have many, many deep discussions on this. I do think that there is a tremendous amount that we can do and more research that we could do also for acute pain, especially with folks that are coming into the ER, for example, or these kinds of things to ameliorate the anxiety that happens just by virtue of whatever they're dealing with, and of course the hospital settings. So I think there's a tremendous amount that can be done to mitigate pain, in part by mitigating suffering and stress and anxiety. That includes also pre-surgery. I think there's a lot that can be done, and there is data to support everything that I'm saying. I've published some of this myself, and I've reviewed a lot of the data also myself. So I don't think we appreciate sometimes. There's a lot of discussion about trauma, and if you think about the result of trauma, it's really anxiety. In my view, I've been thinking about this a lot lately. What we call stress, I would actually call anxiety. And I think anxiety underpins a lot of mental health issues. We of course know about the comorbidity between anxiety and depression. I believe there's a strong comorbidity also between anxiety and manic symptoms, or bipolar, and certainly a linkage between anxiety and schizophrenia, psychosis. I believe that these practices, whether you do them at a distance or you do them by touch, have a propensity of bringing people closer to the experience of their soul nature, their inner compass, their guidance, so that anxiety can be lifted for some time, and the person can enter a sense of safety once we enter that sense of safety, and we can talk about this on the physiological level, those of you who are familiar with polyvagal theory and so forth, it's quite simple, right? A sense of safety allows the nervous system to relax, enhances vagal nerve activity, and so can reduce the perception of pain and allow the immune system to better work in harmony. But I would say that the kernel of this is a spiritual experience where these energy practices aren't just hacking the vagus nerve, they're bringing people to a deep sense of safety. And I know we have a lot of questions, so I'll pretty much stop there, but I will just point you to one of the studies that we did at Camp Pendleton with active duty military. These were folks that were being rapidly deployed back into the war setting who had already experienced significant PTSD. We had like 3 weeks with them, and then they were going off again. We did a 3-week intervention with healing touch, which is in the same room, but hands off the body, combined with guided imagery. And we saw profound, clinically significant decreases in post-traumatic stress using the standard PCL, as well as depression and even hostility in these active duty military. So everything that I'm saying right now is very evidence-based.
Absolutely beautiful. Dashka, I know your video is not working, but you can go ahead and come on and ask your question.
Hi, thank you. I have been really inspired I'm a registered nurse and a healing touch practitioner, and I've gone on to study other modalities of intuitive healing and thought of how could I get my foot in the door to participate in some of the research studies that you have spoken of to help in the future.
Well, it's possible to write grants for these types of studies, though it is very, very difficult to get funding still. One of the reasons we started the Consciousness and Healing Initiative was for that purpose. My initial goal was to raise at least 10 million for research. We haven't done that, nowhere close to that, not at all, actually, sadly. And yet there are opportunities sometimes, even as you know, sometimes with the Healing Touch programs themselves, who will provide seed grants. I think because of the dearth of research funding, it is difficult, and most of the research that is being conducted happens through private donations. So what I would recommend is first finding some collaborators, mentors, and folks at the neighboring university or at your hospital center who will kind of join with you on this so that you have access to a patient population. Start small, just do a pilot in the beginning with 10 or 15 people to demonstrate whether you see any signal with very, very simple metrics that make sense clinically. I'm going with more of a clinical bent, so I'm giving you advice on that way. If you can do mixed method practice where you can actually do some qualitative interview to demonstrate the value of such an approach, it's great. If you can start there, then you're more competitive than to reach out to a private donor or one of these smaller organizations and see if you can get a grant. The NIH and DoD are very difficult to get funding for these studies because they're still looking for the biologically plausible mechanism. Don't even get me started on what I think about that. PCORI, though, Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute, I think is open to effectiveness studies in this area. So personally, I think that's what we need to build to, show the cost effectiveness of these kinds of practices, the improvements in quality of life, the reductions in pain, symptomatology, medication use. So I would sort of aim in that direction, given that you are a nurse. It's fabulous. We need you to do these kinds of studies.
Yeah, it's really inspiring, and that's really helpful information. So thank you, because I do just one person and bedside, but I make my impact. But then it'd be so cool to do more.
Well,
so thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for what you are doing, because that is really what matters. And you being that healing force in your community and in the hospital system will inspire others. So you may find that just by doing your practice, your colleagues may want to learn more. You may find yourself in the position to be helping teach them. And that kind of scalability of like kind of transforming the culture from the inside will also lend itself very well to a harmonious process of doing a study. So I just
Cool.
I want to thank you for just doing it, because that's what really matters the most.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks for
So we have
speaking.
Francis up next, and then after that, I'm going to take one from the chat from Rosa, who put it in quite a while ago, and then we'll go to, please, I hope I don't butcher your name, but Detlef. Hopefully that's close. So yeah, Francis, you're up next.
All right. Well, aloha from Hawaii. I will be at your Scottsdale event. I have a VIP ticket, so I'm looking forward to meeting you.
Oh, wonderful. It'll be
Yeah,
great.
and hi to Lonnie over on the Big Island. My question is fairly simple. I'm trying to wrap my arms around I am a immortal spiritual being, and I am having a human experience, and then I will go back to being an immortal being, and I'll be on to my next experience. So it seems like almost all the training that I'm listening to is how to navigate the human experience, and it doesn't pay enough attention, in my view, to reminding myself all the time that I am an immortal being, and this is just it. It's a human experience. And once I do that, when I wrap my arms around it, all of the tension, all of the stress just goes away. So that's the one I wanted you to talk about that aspect of it. In other words, why don't we remind ourselves that we're immortal beings more often, and that this just is a human experience, and we are creating it. And then the second part of the question, and I'll stop talking, is I would really love to get more detail on how to reprogram my subconscious mind, because I realize that is where a lot of the blocks are. I can tell you that my favorite one is self-talk, and the one that I'm sure if everybody on this call would do the same thing, it'll absolutely put a smile on your face. All you have to do is say, I am lovable and I am adorable.
I love that. I love that.
Okay, so
You
I'll be
are
quiet and
adorable.
yes, thank you. Okay, go for it.
Well, those two things are very linked. And I love your observation that if we just came into both the experience and the knowing that we are immortal, having a human experience, it changes everything. It literally can change our moment to moment experience. And I agree with you that we don't spend enough time talking about that. And I could surmise why a lot of us teachers don't talk about that more often. It has to do with a fear of, bringing people to a spiritual bypass experience. But I think what you are saying is very relevant and important, because this is what brings us back to our practice, in my view. The more we have the practice that brings us to the experience of our true nature and our immortality, the more we can move through the human experience with grace and ease and a sense of love, which is what you were mentioning. That is our true nature. Not only are we immortal, we are love incarnate. And yet we forget that. So to remind ourselves that we are lovable and adorable, and that we can love and adore everything.
Yes.
Because we are that. We're not separate from it, and neither is everyone else and everything else.
Exactly.
So to be able to move through the day with that sense is very powerful. And I will just say, for me personally, that comes with taking some time for silence and practice. And if I don't do that, then I'm running through the conditioned mind filter, the human experience filter, as you call it, the karmic filter, the subconscious filter, all those filters. So now to your question, how do we deprogram? Well, first, as you mentioned, take some time to reflect on your immortality, your very beingness, the love that you are to receive it and to give it and to be it. And honestly, the more we can cultivate that experience, the more we begin to recognize when those subconscious filters pop up, because they're just going to, because it's part of the human experience. It's just part of our learning here on planet Earth. But then we're not in it, we're watching it. Oh, I saw where that came from. Okay, can I take a minute of spaciousness to just breathe and notice where my mind is? That's the mind, nature of the mind. It's always going to be doing something. Cool. Okay. Who is the truth of who I am, even in this moment?
Thank you.
Can I deepen that connection with love before I decide how I'm going to respond, so that my subconscious programming doesn't grab my mind and push me in a direction that's not fruitful for me? It's really that simple.